Okay, so how we doing? All right, and I got stuff, and I got more stuff, and I got less stuff, and I got a screen that's down. All right. Hi, guys. How's it going? So how come you all decided to miss the parade today? I mean, it's not every day we get a parade. Huh? Oh, that's it. Blame it on me, just because. That's all right. I'm good with that. Oh, wow. You know, I figure you guys are all adults, so I figure I'm an adult. I don't think so sometimes. Okay, so MySQL. What kind of database is it? What kind of database is MySQL? What's its primary function in life? All right, so MySQL is something called a relational database. That means it likes relations, all right? That means if you have a username and a user ID, there's a relationship between that user ID and the username. So MySQL, it loves relations. It has indexes. It has tables, and these tables are all interrelated. It's kind of interesting, right? Anybody ever hear of a NoSQL database? All right, you guys are going to install something called MongoDB. All right, MongoDB is basically what's called a NoSQL database. There's a couple different versions, but we're going to work with Mongo today. All right. Now, the idea behind Mongo is that you just jack a whole bunch of information into it. It's one great big huge table, and I mean these things can be huge, right? I mean, huh? What? You can just jack a whole bunch of stuff into one great big huge table and call it good? It is like a gigantic Excel spreadsheet, and it can be ugly. However, it works the same way as your hard drive does. How does your operating system work? It's one great big huge honking spreadsheet with what's called a master boot record, right? Anybody remember what the MBR is? Master boot record. Points. Just high five me on that one. All right. So, all right, it's the same kind of thing. It runs on the same kind of math. Anybody hear of a mathematician named Bacchus Nauer? All right, this is going to be a lecture in its own right. All right, math. Math is a beautiful thing, right? So Bacchus Nauer basically did something called normalization. All right, so we're going to normalize data. When you get into some of the really more extreme forms of normalizations, when you go and you do your forensics, what you're going to see is a big pattern of A's across the hard drive. That's a type of normalization, and that means that that index, that master boot record, knows how all the A's interrelate to all the other sections on that hard drive. So if you lose the master boot record, you end up with a whole bunch of stuff that just says A's across the board. You don't know what's really on the hard drive. And a NoSQL database basically works the same way. One big monster index, one big monster file, and we call it good. NoSQL databases are great if you're running Flickr. They're great if you're running SmugMug. They're great if you're running YouTube, right? They're great for storing big, huge, honking objects in there, gigabit size or megabit size. Where a relational database, because of the way it indexes and works, you'll see a performance decrease when you start storing off really big, huge, honking files in there, right? So if you're running a high-scale, high-availability YouTube or Vimeo or SmugMug or Flickr or Facebook, don't know about MySpace. Anybody know about MySpace? Anybody even remember MySpace? Yeah. MySpace. Yeah, the social virus website, yeah. No, wait, that's Bebo. Anybody remember Friendster? So Friendster, right? All right. So, have you guys updated your computer systems yet? Because that's one of the things you're going to want to do today, is make sure that your systems are updated. So we're going to go sudo apt-get update, and make sure that your system is totally updated. Because there's a lot of packages you're going to need in the update that you won't get otherwise. So your first command is going to be sudo apt-get update. I would put it on a completely different VM, right? And it's just because of the way this thing works. I am saying put Mongo on a different VM. So if you guys need to make a VM, that's cool. You guys can just kind of follow along right now and take notes. Taking notes, writing. You guys can do this along with me, or you can take notes. But it really should be on its own box. And that's because of the way it works, right? Because it will just override everything that it can for its own operations. All right, so once we've got that, because this is exciting, right? Absolutely nothing. All right, your MongoDB should be exactly who and what it is doing its own thing. All right, then it's going to be sudo apt-get install MongoDB -10 gen. If you've already done the upgrade, your next command after the upgrade, your update, you do your update, then your next command after the update is sudo apt-get install MongoDB 10 gen. And there's a minus sign between MongoDB and 10. And then you hit enter. And if it's unable to locate package, right? Make sure I spelled it right. MongoDB. See what happens if I just do MongoDB. All right. So if 10gen doesn't work, just go MongoDB and it will pull the latest version for you. All right. So it would be sudo apt-get install MongoDB. And that's it. You'll notice I already have it installed on my box, so it's kind of part of it. I got to test all this stuff before I actually give this to you. It's one of those things. All right, and then you should have it. Depending on, it should take a couple, 3 or 4, 5, 6 minutes. If your network's really, really slow, it could take the rest of the class. It could take all day. It could take all week. It could take all year. It may just fail. Because it can. Because this is Unix. I've done a lot of struggling with Windows lately. I'm trying to work on 8.1 at home, and I head desk and facepalm more than I should. I really do. All right, so the one thing we want to see, how do we check and see if a process is working? All right, so that means it's working. With any luck, it's working. I like any luck, it's working. All right, so I got to check something here. I got to check and make sure that I'm bridged, right? So you want to make sure that your network adapter is bridged, because there's some stuff you're actually going to be doing here. So there's one of the cool ways that you can actually check some of this stuff out, right? We'll come back to that. All right, so we want to make sure that it's good to go. If it's not running, right, you want to go sudo service MongoDB start if it's not running. So sudo service MongoDB start if it's not running. If you need to stop it, you can just go ahead and type in stop. All right. And if you need to restart it, it's just a restart. All right. So restart. So if you just standard start, stop, restart. Sudo service stop, start, restart. So pretty kind of standard kind of thing. All right. All right, so there's some utilities that I want you to be really, really aware of as we go into this, okay? Just a couple. So if you need to check and see what's going on with your box, you can go, we may have to sudo this, sudo Mongo. I like that. Sudo Mongo is sort of like something stat, sudo Mongo stat. And what it will do is it will tell you everything that's going on with the database right now. All right? So how many locked inserts? Everybody remember what the idea of locking is when it comes to working with a database? Right? You lock a row or a column. You can do the same thing in Mongo. And if you just want to exit out of that, it's Control-C. So this will tell you how hard your database is working. And this is really kind of important. You can actually set up a dashboard to check and see how hard your database is working. And this is really important when you're working with a NoSQL database because it's really easy to underpower these things, right? So when you go in and you're building something like this, you want to make sure that there's a lot of power behind it because you're generally going to be running a high availability, high scalable operation with this kind of database, okay? So you want to keep a really good big close on what the statistics are going on with your box. The other one is Mongo top, right? If it's in here. If it's not in here, figures. All right, Mongo top is one way of doing it. Now there's also an HTTP console if you want to. What you want to do, and I just need to pull up my IP address. No, it should take you and show you what all the really fun things are. All right, so if you've got an HTTP, and then my IP address is 1029.99.226:28017. So if we did this right, if we have it on the default port, then you should be able to go ahead and access your console. If you can't get to it from 28017, try 27017. All right, and that just all depends. So there's some default ports on this if you can get to it. All right, I may be blocked by my own firewall right now, which would be kind of typical because it didn't set up a UFW rule when I installed it. So if you want to get to the IP address, 2701 or 28017. So 28017 or 27017 are the default ports for the HTTP side of it. All right, so 1029, or sorry, your IP address, colon, and then the port number. And again, I'm probably being blocked out by my own firewall. Yes, you have to have Mongo up and running. You can do a lot of that. Huh? And that's what the whole process is when you're working with something like this. That's why you organize databases. You should know what's going on with your system, right? You really should. You really should know what's going on with your system. That's why I want you guys to be able to monitor and know what your top processes are and your stats and the web interface so that if something weird's going on, but then there's some command line references that you can use along the way too, right? So if you have problems, see if we did this right. All right, so if you have to do help, it's just Mongo --, help. So if you actually want to see what's going on inside your database, right? So you can do shell, don't connect to databases. You can do, there's some JS files, some JavaScript. Quiet, you can do port to connect to, server to connect to. There's a lot of stuff you can do at the command line. It's really designed to be run at the command line or through programming. Right? So you can access it through Ruby on Rails, JavaScript. You can do a lot of scripting with this in the actual shell itself. Right? So the help file will kind of give you an idea of what all your commands are around this kind of process. Right? So there's kind of a lot of neat things you can do with this, and we're going to go into a little bit more of the scripting and command side of this. Right? Now, a lot of this is going to belong to your programmer too. Your programmer is going to be running circles around how this thing works. So if you really want to know what's going on, all right, if there's no databases in here, and you say Mongo show DBS, right? Mongo show DBS. It will show you all the databases that are in here. And since we don't have any databases in here right now, it will say failed to load because there doesn't seem to be any, right? So if you have no databases in here, this is going to be a normal error. If there were a database in here, then you would see a big long list of stuff that would be actually involved in this. All right. Mongo show DBS. If you want to show the users, we don't have any users. All right, so it would be Mongo show users. If you want to show all the users in your Mongo database, right? If you want to show the profile, Mongo show profile. If we had a profile, remember we are running off a stock install, right? We have absolutely nothing going on in this, but some really good commands that you're going to want to know, right? Mongo show all the databases. Mongo show DBS. Mongo show users. I like saying this. This is sort of like, I feel like I'm stuck in a Tarzan movie or like maybe Buck Rogers. Mongo do this now, you know. So it's just kind of fun. There's a reason for this. Yeah, Blazing Saddles, perfect example of this. Mongo, except for we are so not going to recreate the fire scene. All right, please. Well, we can if we open up the door and we bring some Lysol in here. All right. All right. Yeah. Nice. Mongo show users, Mongo show profile. All right. And because we're running stock, we're not going to see anything. Jeez. Because we're running stock, we're not going to see anything in here yet. Right. All right. Now, we're also not running in any kind of secure mode or anything else with this, right? So that's another thing to remember, right? Now, it works on some of the same commands that you're familiar with. If you need to drop a whole database, right, there's the drop command in here. So you got to be really careful when you're scripting things up. If someone says drop the database, make sure you're not dropping like the entire production database for this thing.
So you don't want to go
MongoDB drop. It will just kill everything. And you will never be able to recover it because it goes instantaneously back to the file system. Unless you have backups. Right? So that's kind of some of the simple commands that you can do with this. Right? So it kind of makes sense on this one?
So
shoot.
used to be kind of databases be based with large files that are all the same. Right?
If you're running YouTube, if you're running Flickr, if you're running Facebook, then you're going to be running off, some of your website's going to be running off a NoSQL database. You can combine a MySQL database on one server and a MongoDB on another server, and when that page is presented to the user, pull from here and pull from there. Mm-hmm. The big honking ugly files are stored off in Mongo, and then you have a relational linked index back to wherever it was dropped in Mongo, so you can just go pull it straight out of it and present it to the user. So anybody actually on Facebook last night? Did anyone do their little My Movie thing?
Yeah.
All right, so that My Movie, the whole back end is based on Mongo or a similar NoSQL database. So when they went ahead and they did it and they pulled all of those little happy pictures that you posted up for the last, God, I didn't realize I'd been on there for 6 years. That's really scary, right? When they pulled all that stuff out, they went and pulled all my stuff out, made a movie, and then pushed it back into a huge database. And then whether I wanted to access it or not, there it is. So everyone's basically got a movie, but they basically ran it on a back end and then dropped it as a big binary large object. You're going to hear me reference something called a blob. B-L-O-B. B-L-O-B. Binary large object. It's called a blob. And it's not like the movie The Blob from the 1950s where you have this thing oozing out of a theater. It's called a binary large object. It can be a picture. It can be a movie. It can be something called SOAP, which is an entire security credentialing chain, right? You're not programmers. I'm not expecting you guys to program up SOAP objects, okay? Just to let you know that up front. No programming SOAP objects because it's a pain in the butt. But it's that whole kind of concept on how to make this thing go. So it kind of makes sense? Any questions? Let's go ahead and get a fresh VM up, brand new, nothing else on it. Let's go ahead and get MongoDB installed, right? Make sure that your network is bridged so you can at least try to get to it through the HTTP side. I got to check my firewall to make sure we're good. But that's essentially how you install and make sure that your MongoDB is running, right? So do the ps-ef grep mongo, type a couple of the command lines, show your users, show your databases. You won't have anything in there, so there's going to be nothing that exists. And show any kind of profiles that you've got. And then we'll talk about scripting up some of the really cool stuff you can do with Mongo if we get everybody on track.
I use this just as a clone of my LDAP admin. That's all I have on there. We'll be okay to use this one.
And as long as it's clean. And the reason why I'm recommending that you do this thing clean from a fresh image is mostly because Mongo can be kind of resource intensive, right? And it requires a lot of space. It's like one of those programs that just requires its space. It doesn't want to play nicely with other children. It barely plays nicely with some operating systems. So I would go ahead and just put it on a fresh, clean VM. If you need to grab a disk, I've got disks.
And you want to see?
I'd like to see it, yeah.
No, I mean, what all do you want to see?
I would like to see you run through this whole process here, show what you got, and make sure that we've got Mongo Shell version up and running and everything else. So again, the install isn't the hard part. All right, and then we've got to do a couple other things. We're going to teach you how to do a little bit of scripting and how to create a database, insert objects, and all that other cool stuff next. So you guys good? You guys get with are you guys on message? Any questions? Do you need a long holiday? How many people want to go to the parade today? All righty, guys.